This video is about how to make a Freedom of Information request in the UK. So in the UK we have two pieces of legislation that enables you to ask any public authority any questions you want, essentially. We have the Freedom of Information Act 2000 that applies to England, Wales and Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, depending on the authority, and we have a Freedom of Information Scotland Act 2002. If you are wanting to ask a public authority a question, you really only just need to say, please can you answer these questions under the Freedom of Information Act, and they should acknowledge and treat those questions under either of those two pieces of legislation. So the Act covers any recorded information that is held by a public authority in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and by UK-wide public authorities based in Scotland. So information held by Scottish public authorities is covered by Scotland's own Freedom of Information Act. If you want to see what other Freedom of Information Acts have been asked before from different public authorities, there's a fantastic website called whatdotheyknow.com. They have a search box at the top right, and you can put keywords in there, say for example tree felling, biometrics, facial recognition, anything that you're interested in. You can see other Freedom of Information requests that people have asked different authorities and the responses that they've got. So that's a really handy site to use. I use this particular site to ask public authorities Freedom of Information requests because when they respond, the information is public, and it helps other people that are wanting to know that information to give them that data too, so without them having to use Freedom of Information. So overseeing the Freedom of Information Act, we have an Information Commissioner's Office. They oversee the Freedom of Information Act, the Data Protection Act and the Environmental Information Regulations Act, all of which are pieces of legislation that we can use for our purposes. Freedom of Information requires us and enables us to ask public authorities questions. Data Protection Act enables us to ask any company, authority, entity what information they have on us, and the EIR, the Environmental Information Regulations, enables us to ask any company or authority their obligations under different environmental laws. So in this we're just going to have a look at Freedom of Information. So it's really simple to ask a Freedom of Information Act request. You need to find the public authority, their email, think of in between maybe 3 and 7 questions you want to ask them. Use this as a template. You need to make your questions clear. You need to give them a chance to get back to you if they're not clear what you want, and also as well what you might be asking might exceed the cost of the limit that they need to spend in answering your request, in which case they need to get back to you. The only requirements that they need from you is your real name and an email address. If a public authority suspects that you're using a pseudonym, they don't have to reply to you, so it is good to use your real name and obviously an email address. So you're now ready to send a Freedom of Information request, which we're going to call a FOIA. So you can send your Freedom of Information request and you may get back an acknowledgement and a reference number. Hopefully you will get that back. 90% of the time you generally do. If you don't, I think it's prudent to get back in touch with the authority just to check they have received your request, and then you can make a note of that email or telephone call that you've made to them just to get that. Sometimes these Freedom of Information requests can get stuck in inboxes that aren't currently used, or it might have gone to the wrong department, so it is good to follow up and just make sure the authority's got the request. So a Freedom of Information request can take up to 20 working days. In my humble experience of sending over hundreds of Freedom of Information requests out, generally you do wait the full 20 working days. Sometimes you get Freedom of Information requests back before then, which is a really nice surprise, but do expect to wait the full 20 working days. What you need to work into that is allowing for bank holidays, and if you're asking a school a Freedom of Information request, you also need to allow for school holidays. A working day for a school is any day that all the children are in school, so if you're going to send a Freedom of Information request to a school mid-July, you aren't going to get anything back till mid-end September at the very earliest because of the school holidays, so you need to take that into account. So two things are going to happen after 20 working days. You're either going to be happy and you've got a response, or you're not going to be happy with the response you've got, or you've got no response. So we're going to presume that you're happy and you've got all the questions and the answers to the questions that you've got. So what you can do now is a number of things. So when authorities, public authorities, reply to you, their response has to be as robust as it was in a court of law. And it's actually, you can share the information to the world, and they are aware of that, and that's in the spirit of the Freedom of Information Act. So at that point, I always think it's a good idea, because that authority has spent our public money answering your questions. I think it gives a little bit of responsibility to the person asking the questions, then to do something with that information. So you could go to the press, contact a reporter, contact an MP, maybe contact a group or group members that are sympathetic with what you are wanting to find information out about or campaign for. Quite often, sending freedom of information requests then prompts the need to send more freedom of information requests, because maybe you've got the information you need, but there's a certain point that you want to go into further detail with, so you can then send some more freedom of information requests. And really anything else, I mean, you can share that information as you see fit. So if you are not happy with the response you've got, or you've had no response at all, you then have the right to go back to the public authority and ask them to do an internal review. So the public authority then has 20 working days to conduct that internal review, and then they need to get back to you. What public authorities can do, and under the Freedom of Information Act in Part 2 of the legislation, which I'll put a link for in the notes, is that there are certain exemptions which may include law enforcement, national security, all sorts of different reasons, that they have to inform you with which exemptions they're not answering your questions under, and again, this is if you can go back to them with an internal review, and if you're not happy with that, you can take it one stage further. So hopefully, if you've had an internal review and it's been successful, you're then happy, and then you can do what we said before and share the information to the world, etc. However, if you're not happy again after that, you can then contact the Information Commissioner's Office, who oversees the Freedom of Information Act. The Information Commissioner's Office are particularly helpful. They have a great helpline and a live chat facility, which I find particularly helpful, because you can have a live text chat with a real person, and then you can have an email sent to you with the transcript of that conversation you've just had. So I find that quite helpful. So if you go to the Information Commissioner's Office website, there's a tab at the top of that says Make a Complaint. You want to go to the one on the right hand side, which is official or public information. You can click on there, and it will take you through a process of a few pages of how to make a complaint, and it's really simple. They simply want the details of the freedom of information request you sent, the public authorities reply, you send it off to the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, and they will send you a case number, and they will get in touch with the public authority. If you've have to use the Freedom of Information Act Scotland, and you go to the ICO and they say, well listen, you need to get in touch with the Scottish Information Commissioner, they are equally as helpful. Here is their website, and they deal with, for example, county councils, schools, authorities that are specific to Scotland. So we talked about what you could do with Freedom of Information request responses. One of the things that I found particularly helpful in the responses that I've got back is, because the responses are as robust as in a court of law, you can go to members of the press, you can go to members of Parliament, and you can effectively try and get questions asked in Parliament about a specific topic that you're interested in. This is a great website called They Work For You. It's run by the same people that run whatdotheyknow.com. You can type in keywords here and see what the chatter is on particular aspects of society that you're interested in. If you see there's an MP that is interested in what you're campaigning about or what you have a concern about, you could get in touch with that MP and say, you know, we've had a Freedom of Information request response that states this is my concern, and they may or may not take that one step further and raise that in Parliament. This is a process that is available to any member of the public. I've been using information requests now maybe for about 15 years. But I felt quite daunted when I first sent my first request, because I wasn't used to, as a citizen, knowing or asking questions of people in authority or authoritative institutions. And it's quite encouraging to see that you can do this, and you can really get to the bottom of some quite emotive subjects. So please do use Freedom of Information. If you've got any questions at all, get in contact with the Information Commissioner's Office or the Scottish Information Commissioner's Office. They are really helpful. So you shouldn't have much problem, hopefully, getting information you want from some public authorities. So just to recap, and be clear in your requests, always be polite. You have to be patient. You will not get an answer within a week. It'll be a month if they reply, or 2 months if they don't reply, and even longer. I suspect sometimes they delay because they don't want to respond to you. It's probably actually because they're very overworked, underpaid and understaffed in whatever department they're in. But you have a right for that information, and the Information Commissioner's Office will help as much as they can if you don't get what you want. And finally, act upon your reply. Do something positive with it. Say that's been people's time, trouble and taxpayers' money that's being used to give you that information. I always feel an obligation to do something with Freedom of Information Act responses that I get. So, good luck. These are my websites: Biometrics in Schools, State of Surveillance, and Against RFID in Schools. Good luck with your Freedom of Information requests. I hope you're successful, and I hope this video has helped.